Hello, Shoyan here. I'm a carpenter based in Japan. Last time I finished installing the subfloor. There is a small kitchen doorway, so I'm installing a kamachi there and hinoki cypress flooring for 2 rooms. Whether it's a renovation or new construction, it starts to look like a room after installing the floor. I think I've uploaded more videos about flooring installation than any other operation. Carpentry is all about installing floors, so this is the first step in building a room. First, I install the kitchen doorway kamachi. Because the kamachi is for a kitchen doorway, I use a small piece of wood, about 120 millimeters by 36 millimeters in size, but the installation process is the same. Whether 120, 150 or 180 millimeter wide kamachi is used, the joint used is the same. This joint is the same one that is used for crown molding in a Japanese style room. I just cut a thin vertical mortise and tenon miter one side and join them. It is a bit time consuming to cut this joint, but easy to join. The thin mortise and tenon joint ensures the wood fits properly and does not shift when joined. That's why I put in the extra effort here. This is a traditional method when joining wood at right angles. Originally, this kitchen doorway space was 90 centimeters square, one step lower, and had an earth floor. Because there was a storage shed outside and an old window frame, the new window frame overlaps the shed's roof. Therefore, the doorway couldn't be leveled with the floor and should remain one step lower in an earth floor style. Since the hinge door has been replaced with a sliding door, I'm going to reduce the space by 2/3 and create a small kitchen doorway. Before installing the kamachi in the kitchen doorway, I reinstalled the diagonal brace that was removed during demolition. The direction is the same as before.
저기요.
In the past, diagonal braces were installed without being secured with any hardware. Hardware can't be used this time either. The inner wall on the back of the diagonal brace is mud plastered. Even if I add hardware now, it won't strengthen the building. It will be sufficient to use longer screws and use more of them than usual. Now I join the kamachi in the kitchen doorway. Since the thin mortise and tenon joint is used, they are easy to join, but they do not fit together as expected. In such a case, I slightly handsaw the widest part of the gap on the joint. This means sawing 2 pieces of wood together. This way, they will fit perfectly when the saw is removed. We call this doing aiba, which cuts the thickness of a saw blade parallel to the gap. It ensures both pieces of wood attach neatly. Carpentry work doesn't always work well the first try. Adjusting it once or twice is fine as long as the finishing is neat. When installing solid wood floorboards, I make sure to create a larger level difference between the kamachi. This is because solid wood inevitably warps upward or downward at the ends. In the previous video, I mentioned that the subfloor installation was complete with only the area around the kitchen doorway left to do. Now the subfloor installation is finally finished. I can finally install the flooring. Before installing the flooring, I cut off the bottom of the main support pillar. First, I use an electric plane to make a piece of floorboard thinner, about the thickness of a handsaw blade. Then, I place the handsaw on this thinned floorboard and cut the pillar. This ensures that the top of the saw blade matches the height of the actual floorboard to be installed. It also stabilizes the handsaw so that the pillar is cut neatly. Only one part of this main support pillar is visible. It is rather hard to cut off, so I cut one surface and a corner individually. Now I install the first floorboard. I've confirmed the position of all the floorboards, and a narrow piece of wood will be used on the edge of one room. I install the first floorboard without cutting it down. Since it is long, I set a string parallel to the threshold, attach a piece of floorboard, and draw a line based on the location of the floorboard farthest away from the threshold. If I make a mistake even a little, some part may have insufficient width. In the case of renovation, the threshold is warped, so I make sure to measure the entire area carefully and install the floorboard at the farthest point from the threshold. The first floorboard should be as straight as possible. If it is warped, it's difficult to plane and hard to cut to size accurately. If a straight piece is used, it will attach well to the existing threshold and the wall. If the first floorboard is warped, all the rest will be misaligned, so I carefully select and install the first floorboard. करो। The floorboard is made of hinoki cypress. It is 15 millimeters thick and knotless. Even though the boards are knotless, not all of them have a nice grain. I first untie the bundle of boards and select a location for each one. As with any job site, I think it's crucial to select the floor properly in my own way. No matter how neatly the floor is installed, if the colors and grain are not matched well, there will be a sense of discomfort and regret after the installation. But when I select the floorboards and decide on their location beforehand, I can accept it. I always focus on that. After the second floorboard, I temporarily lay out all the floorboards instead of cutting and installing them individually. This way, I can find a better location to match the color and grain. I start finding where to make the access panel opening. It's as difficult as selecting the floorboards. Wherever it is, it will be noticeable. It is unnoticeable under the fridge, but the surrounding floor can weaken if a common size of fridge is placed above it. So I make an access panel next to a solid long joist. It's difficult to make the access panel when the subfloor and insulation are installed. It's not difficult when making an opening, but the insulation gets in the way when installing the rafter as reinforcement. I am always troubled by this reinforcement. The good thing is that the width of the boards is 150 millimeters, meaning that only 3 boards are needed to make a 450 millimeter access panel door. There is a big difference between using 3 boards and 4 boards. Now I install the second floorboard and then the rest of them. Most of the floor is temporarily arranged and already cut, so installation of the middle part is quick. I stagger the floorboards by 1.8 meters. In half of the area, 3.6 meter floorboards reach both ends of the room, but it's not a good idea to change the joints in the middle of the floor. It looks unnerving. I stagger each floorboard by 1.8 meters throughout the room. The floorboard width is 150 millimeters, so it inevitably warps upward or downward and is more noticeable than with narrower boards. However, the greater the width, the more gorgeous it looks, and I like it. The flooring installation was not so tricky this time, but cutting off the floorboard to fit the kitchen doorway kamachi was challenging. When I first decided on the location of the kamachi, I cut the board 3 centimeters shorter for safety. However, I ended up cutting quite a lot of length. I wonder if the wood has grown and extended. I measure the size and install it. The space between the floorboard and the kamachi on the right side was luckily about 2 millimeters wider, so I can slide the last floorboard from the side. If it was on the opposite side, I have no choice but to hammer it down from the top. It was coincidental but fortunate that the right side was wider. Finally, I work on the access panel. The size is 450 millimeters, but it doesn't perfectly fit with the 150 millimeter floorboards, so I adjust the board. I allow a clearance of about 2 millimeters between the frame and the floor. If there is no clearance, it cannot be adjusted later if the floor door is not properly at right angles. There must be a support frame under the access panel. The access panel will be secured from the top, not from the sides. I make sure to install the support frame firmly. When I first installed the floor, I left 3 pieces of wood for the access panel, cut from the same plank. I'd like to make the door from those floorboards so that the grain will match. The frame is about 450 millimeters, but the door is about 1 centimeter smaller. So I cut the length and the width according to size and joined 3 floorboards. A lever handle will be used for the floor door. I was considering whether to install the backplate parallel or at right angles to the floorboards, but I decided to install it parallel this time. Since there are 3 boards, I thought it'd look better when viewed from above if the backplate is secured in the middle with the handle at right angles. There will be 2 supports on the back for reinforcement, and the handle comes right between them. I usually install them at right angles, but I thought this direction would be better. I set the finished door into the frame that I set earlier. Then I secure the frame at this stage according to the door's position. If the frame is secured first, the right angles may not fit the position of the door and the surrounding gap would not be uniform. So it is important to make the door first and secure the frame in a way to fit to the door. Now I have finished installing the floor. 2 rooms are made into 1 room. It's bigger than I expected. I'll install the ceiling and walls next time. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.